All right, guys, welcome back to OrthoLinks Orthopedics Podcast. We're here today with a special guest, Fred Allen Meyer. Say hello to everyone.
What's up, guys?
So Fred is a Kentucky boy, and we're going to talk today a little bit about his golf career, when he started playing golf, and then talk a little bit about how he met us and why he met us at OrthoLinks. And so we'll kick it off. So Fred, get started. Tell us where you grew up and when you started playing golf and a little bit of history there.
Yeah, so I grew up here in central Kentucky and just south of Lexington in Nicholasville. And my dad ran a golf course from the time I was born till, 10 years old. So I've been around the game, around golf since I was born. I think I started swinging a club at 1 year old, and I played my first tournament when I was 6. So
Nice.
I've been playing competitive golf for essentially my whole life.
So talk about that a little bit. When junior golf, that's actually pre-junior golf when you're 6 years old, but talk a little bit about your experience. And you obviously took it up very early, and it helps if your dad's running a golf course because you can run around the putting green and the driving range. You get that. When is the first time that you played 18 full holes?
Funny story, actually. I was probably right around that time I started playing tournaments. I played 18 full holes, and my parents had no idea where I was. So long story short, I put on slacks, carried my own bag for 18 straight holes by myself. I think I shot 120, and they had no idea where I was, but I'd been watching golf on TV, and I was like, I want to be like those guys. So that's what I thought I had to do, put on the pants and carry my bag and go for it.
Yeah. So, but you'll still play a practice round in shorts now though, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So very, very young, basically grew up with a golf club in your hand. And so that's awesome. And then starting at 6 when you played tournaments, tell me then, so played in high school, actually played very, very young in high school, right? You're in 6th grade.
Yeah. So 6th grade, I made the high school team. I went out for it in 5th grade.
Yeah.
But I didn't make the team.
Even Jordan got cut from his freshman team. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So went out for the team in 5th grade, didn't make the team, but they let me practice with them. So I went to practice every day, and I'm like, that was my goal. I'm making that high school team. Yeah. And so 6th grade, kept practicing, go out for tryouts, make the team, make the top 5.
When do you think the first time you broke 90? When did you shoot in the 80s?
Probably right around 4th, 5th grade.
Okay.
5th grade. But, 6th grade, I'm trying to play a 7,000-yard golf course, hitting it 220 yards, 230 yards. It was pretty tough, but
yeah. Do you think that helped you early on to try to keep up with people who are hitting it past you?
Absolutely. Like, I grew up playing golf. The people I played with were always older than me and better than me. And that no doubt made me a lot better.
Gotcha. So high school, very early, 6th grade. And people in Kentucky know, if they were around watching golf at that time, you won a few trophies.
I did
in your time as an amateur. And then talk about as you're starting to try to make a decision on where to play college golf, what that was like.
So for me, it was maybe kind of a unique situation where I grew up right here, right around Lexington, and in the wintertime, there's only one place to go practice. So the UK team was always practicing there, and I would always go out there. And so, like, from a very young age, I'm like, my dream is to play golf at the University of Kentucky, and that's the only place I want to play golf. If I ever get the opportunity, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
So I went to, I think, a UK golf camp when I was maybe 7th and 8th grade, and kind of hit it off with Coach Craig. And 9th grade, he started watching me play in AJGAs and tournaments around the state, and I started playing really well, and he continued to recruit me, and then so did other coaches, and I ended up taking a couple visits to Auburn and Florida, and on those visits, and I actually unfortunately visited Louisville too, but but anyway, on these visits,
you're forgiven.
On these visits, I kept thinking, like, how Kentucky was better than those schools. So I'm like, my decision's made. As soon as I ever get up to Kentucky, I'm going.
Yeah.
And after my sophomore year, Coach Craig offered me, and
Yeah, like as soon as you're allowed to offer somebody when you finish your sophomore year.
Fortunately, he offered me, and I took it right there on the spot. So
yeah,
that was
cool. So
pretty
talk
cool.
about that. So when you show up at University of Kentucky, you've been playing junior golf. You played with some really good players and played in tournaments with some really good players before you go to Kentucky. How's college golf different than an amateur career where you're playing junior golf and high school golf? What was that transition like?
The biggest thing is like this school is so much more demanding. So having to do college classes, and then you got to practice 4 or 5 hours a day. It's like it was definitely a big adjustment for me.
Yeah. So time management is a big difference. And
that was like the biggest thing for me is learning how to properly manage my time. And so yeah, I think that was the biggest adjustment.
Gotcha. What about from a player standpoint, because you go from, and you played some nice courses when you're a junior, but you also go in the college level. We were talking about this a little bit. The reason the scoring averages are so bad, if you look at them in colleges, because you get to play some incredible courses, right? You go to some places that you wouldn't do, even on a mini tour or even the Latin tour. Like you play these courses that are unbelievable.
100%. College golf we play, especially in the SEC, playing a really tough schedule on very demanding, challenging golf courses.
Yeah.
And a lot of times playing them in the spring in crappy weather, winds blowing like crazy.
Yeah.
Like it is no joke.
Like a scoring average of 74 is not a bad thing. When you're like, we were talking to Billy Tom before. He's like, I was shooting 76 and finishing in the top 5 in some of these courses. Right. And you're like, you shoot 76 now in your level, you just pack your bags and go home. There's no 76s. So, not to get in big detail, but unfortunately you got hurt, right? When you're at University of Kentucky and you hurt your hip. And kind of talk us through like, how that happened, number one, but number two, like mentally what that was like going through an injury and not being able to play golf.
Yeah. So it started the summer before my freshman year. I think maybe July. I was having some low back pain, nothing crazy. I just would get on a foam roller, do that, stretch, and it was okay. But it gradually kept getting worse. Anyway, get to school, start qualifying. I'm in pretty serious pain. So I'm seeing the trainer every day at school as soon as I got there. I made it through the first qualifier somehow. Don't know how, but made it through the first qualifier. So we go to this first event, and 36 whole day, first day. I mean, I was in bad shape. I mean, I remember it was at Kiwa Island, so the ocean course. And I remember on one hole I had like 160 yards, and I hit a 5-iron as hard as I could, and it didn't even get to the green. So I was in bad shape. And we get home, we drove to that event, get home late, whatever night, and I can't even hardly walk up the steps to go to my dorm room. And I'm like, something's bad wrong. Yeah. So later that week, I get an MRI, and it shows that I have a small stress fracture in my low back, I think L4, L5. So we get a plan, rehab it for six months, whatever, still not better. So do another MRI. It still shows there's a small stress fracture. So rehab it for another few months, still doesn't get any better. I'm like, something's off. Like, this isn't it.
Right.
So the next time I go in get another MRI, I'm like, I'm having some hip pain, and they get the images, and it shows I have a torn labrum in my hip. Meanwhile, we're 8 months into this whole rehab process. So torn labrum in the hip, need to get it repaired. Takes a couple months to get in and get the surgery. So now we're 10 months in, get the surgery, another 6 to 8 month recovery, and all of a sudden I've been out of golf for a year and a half. Yeah. Hadn't touched a club. So the start to my college career was definitely less skill. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're able to kind of battle through that and rehab. And one of the things that you and I talked about before is like, one of the things that's important is meaningful rounds, right? Having rounds
Yeah,
under your belt to know how to address adversity and all the other stuff that goes with trying to play golf. And so
absolutely.
even though you were able to go through and finish out, like you hadn't played as many meaningful rounds as other people had played. So
No.
that talk about that transition. Was there ever a consideration after college that you may do something else other than chase the little white ball around?
No, not after college, because I my senior year, that spring I played pretty solid, and I mean, it's been my dream to play professional golf since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Putting on those slacks to walk 18 holes when I was 6 years old by myself. So like
There
that's
you
been my
go.
dream my whole life.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So really, that I at least was like, I don't know how long I'll be able to do it or whatever, but I'm definitely giving this a shot.
Awesome. And then,
And
so talk about that. Once you decide you finish school, what's the game plan like? And I'm talking about for kids who are like in school now and they're thinking like, okay, I'm going to become a professional golfer. Talk about that. How the transition from high school to college was, okay, I got to do better at time management for school and all the other stuff. What's the transition from college golf to professional golf like?
well, now in professional golf, you're your own boss. You're
Yeah.
controlling
The
all
team
your
van is not showing up for practice,
time,
right?
and you're not having somebody on your butt about being somewhere at 9 a.m. and if you're at 9:01, you're
Right.
doing a workout or whatever it may be. But so you make your own schedule, and if you don't like to grind and practice and are okay with making long drives by yourself, this ain't it for you.
So
It's
even though you don't love those things, because and everyone goes through it now, everybody's situation is different on how that works. So talk a little bit about like people who don't really follow golf. What do you have to do in that transition from college when you become a professional golfer to succeed? Like, because I guess what I'm talking about is you have to get status somewhere, right? You have to be able to
right,
you have to be able to play somewhere. So talk about that a little bit.
right.
What it,
So there's PGA Tour Canada, PGA Tour Latino America, and then obviously the Corn Ferry Tour, and then the PGA Tour. That's the ways getting in the PGA Tour system and moving up the ranks there. So there's separate Q schools for Canada and Latin and Corn Ferry. So that first fall when I turned pro, I went to Corn Ferry Q school and missed it first stage, and then so just started playing mini tour events.
yeah. So talk about mini tour for people who don't understand that term. All golfers that are professional know that. What's the mini tours are like?
So mini tours are basically legal gambling in a sense that you you put up $1,000 of your own money and you're playing for 10 grand. Like that's pretty standard mini tour events.
Yeah. But in
All
the same thing, like you may have to travel there, right? You're going to come play
oh yeah,
somewhere it's warm, so
right.
your expenses are more than $1,000 to play a mini tour
Oh,
event, and
well,
it can really add up really, really fast on how much money
yes,
you're spending. And then
absolutely.
if you don't win or finish second, you lost money, right? You lost your
Yeah,
gamble.
yeah.
So all of that is those meaningful rounds, though, that we are talking about before in order to get through the Q school. So you recently got status on the Latin tour, correct? Through Q
Yeah.
school, through the Latin
Yeah.
tour. And
Yes.
talk a little bit about just the young golfers that are coming from the state of Kentucky right now. Because you guys, there's a crew of you guys that can really, really hit the ball and play golf. So
There.
what do you think is, it's a little bit different for you. You grew up on a golf course, like you always had a dream to play a golfer, but what do you think changed through the years to make Kentucky like a hot spot for young, talented golfers?
So I think we're kind of subjects of the Tiger effect. I mean, that's when people around my age, 20, 25 to 28, that's everybody loved Tiger Woods and everybody wanted to start
Yeah.
playing golf. So there's all kinds of, I don't know what the deal is with Kentucky, but there's a bunch of people in Kentucky that love playing
Well,
golf.
there's some guys who are your age that can really play. Like we have a crew of kids that you're like, man, if you put
Absolutely.
that together. So talk about also, talk about your friends that you have that are playing golf right now and how important that is. If you're going to chase this dream that you have somebody who knows what that's like, isn't it?
Right.
It's important to surround yourself with people who understand what that grind is like. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had, and I've always known that growing up, we always knew that, like, golly, all the guys we're playing against in these local tournaments are really freaking good.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of us playing growing up, and we knew everybody was good. And everybody went and played college golf,
Yeah.
and then most guys have turned professional after school. So it's
Yeah.
really cool. In specifically Central Kentucky, like when we're all home from events, we're all playing together, getting money games 4, 5, 6 days a week, and
Yeah.
we're constantly pushing each other, making each other better.
Yeah.
And I
One
think a
thing I
lot.
noticed, because I know a lot of you guys, but one thing I noticed is like all of you legitimately want everyone to be successful, which is kind of cool. Unlike maybe a different sport where you have to pass somebody up like football and just grind and be like, okay, I got to jump higher, run faster. There's enough room for everybody in Central Kentucky who wants to play golf if you do well, because you're the ultimate independent contractor, which means if you don't play well, you don't make money.
Yeah.
If you don't play well, it's like on you for the most part. So it actually leads itself. We say golf's a gentleman's sport, but it's true. Like you're able to get behind and help push other people. I think Brendan caddied for you, right? When you went to Q school. So it's just like
Yeah, he got it for me.
everybody's pushing. Yeah. Everybody's pushing each other. It makes each other better. So it's really cool to see. And I think it's really important actually that you guys got to hang together and root each other on. So
No
it's
doubt.
really cool to see. And hopefully what happens through the years is we just keep grinding out. There's a lot of young, talented Kentucky golfers right now playing high school golf, and the ones that are getting ready to go to college. So hopefully we just keep that line going forward.
Right.
But once you get down and now that, okay, I'm a professional golfer, I'm doing my own time, we're doing this, getting some money games. And now that you have status, talk about what your goals specifically are, not just to make it to the PGA Tour, but let's talk about short-term goals that you have right now.
So short-term goals would be on the Latin Tour. The goal is to finish top 5 on the order of merit. And that gets you guaranteed Korn Ferry starts. And that's definitely the goal, is to get to the Korn Ferry Tour. That's the ultimate goal right now.
Yeah, for people who don't know, also back in the old days, you just had 6 rounds of Q school, and if you survived that drudgery, then you got a PGA Tour card for a year.
Right.
And you had to stay in the top 125 on the PGA Tour to retain your card. If you didn't, then you had some, there's different stuff, but you had some preliminary status, but you may have to go back to Q school to get your card again. It's different now. There's kind of like a minor league golf, which is the Korn Ferry Tour. And really, aside from certain exemptions, it's the way to get on the PGA Tours through the Korn Ferry season. And they give 2 opportunities to do that. The regular season points get in, and then they have the Korn Ferry finals that give an additional 25 spots, I think, to get to the PGA Tour. So really there's a stepwise fashion. And I think what's happened over time though is the Korn Ferry Tour has become a viable way to make a living now, or maybe once it wasn't before, meaning like at least you can cover your costs. Obviously everyone wants to go to the PGA Tour,
Right.
but if you do well on the Korn Ferry Tour, then it offsets some of those financial hardships that you have with trying to chase professional golf. So short-term goals, finish in the top 5, get to some starts on the Korn Ferry Tour, and then obviously make it to the PGA Tour.
Absolutely.
Let's switch the mode a little bit. So we met, I think I was looking back, it's like October 2019. So you must have just came out of school and
and
just starting.
Moved to Florida, actually.
So just moved to Florida, and I think through my brother or someone, we met, and it was like, oh, there's this dude who has trouble getting out of a car right now. Can we do something to help? And it was with your hip at that time. He's really kind of restricted. So talk about the initial, if you remember, encounters at OrthoLinks and what that was like. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you've progressed through some time.
Clear as day. So Chip and I were living together. Chip McDaniel and I were living together in Orlando, and he knew you and your brother, but he knew Jesse really well. So he's like, Jesse texted me and wants to play golf over in Tampa today. Like, let's go and play. I was like, oh, perfect. Great. And so I think we met you all at OrthoLinks, and y'all were like, you want to come in and check it out? do the Dari screen, and maybe get some treatment. I'm like, okay, sure. So you put me on Dari, and before I get started, you say, do you have any pain or injuries or anything? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I've got both. And you're like, well, don't tell me what it is. Let's do the Dari screening and see if I can pinpoint it. So you put me through that series of tests, and you get the results, and you're like, it looks like you have a left hip injury, or you're tight on your left hip, and that may be the issue. I'm like, that's exactly it. So that was, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And so then next step is to get on the new fit and start juicing that hip to see if it'll react. And it did. I walked in OrthoLinks literally halfway being able to swing a golf club. I wouldn't even say, definitely not efficiently. And like you said, getting in and out of a car was kind of a pain. It took a lot of effort. So after we did the one time, we went and played 18 holes, and I'm like, I'm pain-free for the first time in 4 years playing golf, which was really wild. So then over the course of the next 6-8 months, I think I came over there once a week to get treatment. and
somehow we turned you into an electricity addict or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
but through time, what happened in the very initial scan that we did on the rotation of your low back, you had something like, it was either 6 or 9 degrees of rotation, when in a normal human you need 30, and an elite golfer you need 50. And so you start in a really bad place, and probably over time that had caught up and has kind of slowed down. It's possible that the stuff that you had in your back actually end up causing the hip stuff. We'll never know for sure, but it's possible that you even played at a really high level of golf, but still couldn't rotate your back properly, which led to a hip injury. So one of the things we do at OrthoLinks is, if we can get people early and get them on the Dari scan and find those issues, then sometimes we can prevent big injuries that lead to labral tears in the hip and those type of things. We don't know if that's the case for you, but it's possible that you were restricted and that's what's causing it. So then, like you said, you come and get electricity as much as you can, which is good. So talk about that experience, because it's not painless to get treatment.
Oh, it's
what is that like to get juiced with the new fit?
So sometimes, not very fun. Other times it's manageable, but I would say the benefits that you get from it are, you can't put anything on. Like, the pain is all worth it. The time, everything about it is just so worth it, because it truly is life-changing stuff. And I can speak on that firsthand, because it's allowed me to continue chasing the dream of playing professional golf pain-free and doing it efficiently as possible.
And we're actually still working on you, even a couple of years later. We're trying to get a plan for this hip so we can make it even easier. But you were just here, and your numbers are good, right? You're swinging the golf club very, very fast, and a little more efficient than you probably had in the past. And obviously we want more. We always want more if we can. Absolutely. But your last scan that we just did in our new mobile unit, you had 47 degrees of rotation, which is crazy. Yeah. So we went from 9 to 47. And we talk about try to prevent injuries and trying to do that stuff. But in your situation, it's really going to be able to unlock a more efficient golf swing, so you can swing with more power and have less chance of hurting your hip or hurting your low back.
Exactly.
Long-term, what we're hoping to do with all of our professional golfers is literally just give you longevity and less painful golf over time, because the golf swing is not a natural movement by any means, and the wear and tear and the bad outcomes to the muscles in your back and your hip and all those things can add up over time. And that's why once you become 50, they let you play from the women's tees for the professional tour. But what we're trying to do is kind of keep your window of healthy, painless golf much longer, to give you to allow you to chase your dream. Now, absolutely. once you kind of got an idea of like, okay, I can, this has kind of been a life changer for me, and I can play painless golf. We also are always trying to push the bar on what we can do next. So I think before I've hooked you up on the heart rate variability stuff, and we
Right.
look at sympathetic and parasympathetic stuff. So what we're trying to do also is be a comprehensive place for, once we get past the injury stuff, start working on performance side of things. So for you now, it's going to be tweaking this hip and getting some strength, and then really trying to just bust through barriers from the performance standpoint. And one of the things we do with the new fit stuff is work on the parasympathetic, and talk about what it feels like in a professional, let's say a professional event. Let's go to the Latin Tour, the last event that you played. So you finished 9th, right, at the Latin Tour. So a really
Yeah.
good week. Everything went well. Talk about the emotions of playing on a Friday and playing on a Sunday when there's money involved and there's points involved. What is that like mentally as a golfer, to know that, you know, the future's in your hands now? Like, you've done the things you need to do, you've trained, you practiced, and now the outcomes are dependent on how well you put that ball in the hole.
Right. So going back to that tournament, I played pretty well on Thursday, and Friday I was going off to a pretty solid start. I probably was inside the cut by 3 shots, making the turn on Friday afternoon. And first event, I didn't make the cut, so I'm like, let's get this thing going. But it was nerve wracking. Like I'm just like, let's just stick to our game plan, try to make as many birdies as we can. And fortunately, did that and played well. I think I shot 5 under on Friday, which was good.
Yeah.
Made the cut. So that was a huge relief for me. Just like give me the confidence is like, you belong here. You can make cuts. You can do this. And
Yep.
I went into the weekend. I played solid and got out of there with a top 10. But it definitely is.
Talk about
stressful.
not to go back, we don't want to harp on bad rounds, but talk about the week before that, how it was different. Like, okay, first tournament out, is there a difference in the way that you feel when you're playing?
Yeah, I think that week I wanted to play well so bad that I just totally got in my way.
Yeah. And
And
that's exactly what I was alluding to. Like, cause there's like
yeah,
a lot of pressure, internal pressure, probably not
absolutely.
external pressure, but you put the pressure on
No,
yourself,
100%.
to like, okay, I'm here, we're getting this thing started, so let's play really well. And
Yeah,
really the result of it, and this is what I'm alluding to, is when you're able to just do what you do, let your body do what it's capable of doing, and stay in your practice and routine, the performance is actually better. Because when you start to try to grind
100%.
and you start to try to
Yep,
double down, then things start getting out of whack. And then
absolutely.
all of a sudden, maybe your swing speeds up a little bit, or your hips slow down, or the putt, the tempo is not good. So that's the other thing that we're working on. And I'll say that we're not quite there yet. We're still working on it. We're trying to get you in a spot where all you have to do each week is just perform as good as you're able of performing, and the results are going to be good enough. And so getting your body right, looking at the parasympathetic stuff, and then letting you go perform. I think the people who do it at the best level, when we start talking about Tiger, you still go back to his run. He just knew he was so much better than everyone else.
Right.
And because of that, if his C game shows up, it's going to be good enough.
Yeah.
And if his B game shows up, he wins by 3. If his A game shows up, good luck. Like, the
Yeah.
whole game is over. And so that's what we're trying to do on the performance side of things too. We're always going to push the bar on, it's not mental. So it's not like, we're not a mental coach by any means, but we're trying to get the body to react to adversity in a stable way. So one of the things that makes it capable now is Whoop, not to put a commercial out, but we'll do it anyway. Whoop, you can monitor your heart rate through the whole round now. So with Whoop Live, we can go to, your putt on hole 10 at 10:52 in the morning and see what your heart rate was doing when you really needed to make that putt on Friday to make the cut. And what we found out, and what we're finding out, is your heart rate's going crazy because your body's response to that situation is high. So we believe that over time, what we're going to be able to do is still keep your heart rate at 80 or 90. You can be that stone cold killer, and and make the putt, and your body doesn't react. It's not a mental thing. Like, how do I get focused mentally? It's just what your body's doing on the back end. So we're still working on that stuff. It's kind of Star Trek stuff that we're trying to do for golfers, but if we can get you to play without pain and swing and maximize your stroke, the next step for us then is to see if we can control that parasympathetic, so that when you're in the wind gust and it makes it a missed club because it's the wind's fault, and then the way your body reacts to the par putt that you have to make from 12 feet is not so bad.
Right.
Especially when you're on the cut line, and especially when you would like to make some money that weekend. So,
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, I greatly appreciate your time, and obviously it's been a huge pleasure working with you over time, and we're going to keep grinding until you get that little PGA Tour card, and you can fulfill that dream. And we're going to try to drag along every Kentucky boy who's willing to do that. So one day hopefully we start to look at the fields, and somebody's going to be asking questions like, why in the world are all these Kentucky boys on here?
I think it's going to happen, Doc.
I do too. Awesome, man. Appreciate your time, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right.